How is AI going to affect the UK over the next 10 years? While attendees at the Future of Britain conference, organised by the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, don't possess clairvoyant powers, they are very well placed as some of the best informed people in science, the arts and government to try and help answer that question. In a speech opening the event, former Prime Minister Tony Blair made it clear he believes AI is key to the UK's economic success.
It will change everything, and positively, if we embrace it in a spirit of innovation, not introspection.
And new Health Secretary Wes Streeting says that AI can play a role in the NHS.
Doubling the number of CT and MRI scanners, and not just more scanners, but AI-enabled scanners, those are massive productivity gains.
As founder and CEO of pioneering AI company Google DeepMind, Sir Demis Hassabis has been developing AI for healthcare, scientific research and consumer use long before it was fashionable.
It will transform everything. So it will be at least as big as the Industrial Revolution, possibly, bigger, more like the advent of electricity or even fire.
What does he think the UK's new Labour government should do to make the best of artificial intelligence?
I think it's a big opportunity actually for the country and the new government to embrace the economic opportunities that I think are going to come with AI, and also the scientific possibilities. So helping with healthcare, drug design, but also climate.
Now, the new Labour government has said that it wants to be a green superpower. And we know that at the moment, this technology, the artificial intelligence, is very, very power hungry. Yeah. So how is that relationship going to work out in the future, do you think?
I think in the short term, that's correct. There's a lot of power needed to scale these systems up. But most of the large companies, including Google, have committed to green power usage and net zero targets. The types of systems we're building, we're training on these large data centers will have enormous implications and good use cases for climate. So things like getting more efficiency out of existing infrastructure like power grids. Also, we're applying AI itself to save power in the data centers. So I think in the end, what these AI systems do will save energy and power far outweighing what they're currently using.
People worry about their jobs and job security. How will AI affect employment?
I think like previous big technological revolutions like the internet or mobile, I think it's going to also create many new jobs, new types of jobs that we can barely imagine today.
There's a lot of American investment, there's a lot of investment going on in China. Where does the UK sit?
Yeah, I think if you look at it, of course, there's the US and there's China. They're the kind of two superpowers. They have the most investment and the most research. But I think if you look at the next tier, the UK is right in there in the mix. So partly to get the economic gains and the prosperity from that, but also to influence how it goes on the world stage.
Okay, crystal ball moment. How far away do you think we are from artificial general intelligence?
So AGI is a term that we sometimes use in the field to describe roughly human-level AI, systems that are capable of general solutions to problems, a bit like the human mind can do. And I think we're, maybe I wouldn't be surprised if it was sort of in the next decade. So perhaps a 50% chance in the next decade.
Sir Demis Hassabis, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Life is brilliant. It's sprung up in almost every part of the planet, in every shape imaginable, and many that aren't.
There's a lot of life out there still left to be discovered and described.
And that's a fact. Most of the world's flora and fauna are, as yet, undocumented. But that also means that we don't know what effects we humans and our ever-expanding civilization are having on most of the world's species.
If we start to lose this diversity, and things can't be moved around and they can't adapt, then we sort of have a house of cards that's falling apart. And if we lose the key species in that, then we know we won't be able to restore our ecosystems.
Q X Prize Rainforest, a 5-year competition challenging teams from around the world to develop tech to find out what lives where. First prize, $5 million. The mission, to design robots that can autonomously collect environmental DNA, eDNA, from an area of rainforest, and also to develop new techniques to analyse the biodiversity contained within that data.
Environmental DNA, simply DNA that's being shed off of every species. And our technologies are advanced enough now that we can just take a water sample or an air sample or a surface sample, and from that we can describe what species are living in a place.
BioDivX from ETH University in Zurich is one of the teams that made it through the semi-finals in Singapore and have been practicing for the finals in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. And today I've come to Zurich to meet their autonomous drone.
Actually, what's important here is what's hanging underneath the drone. That is a probe on about 50 meters of wire that can be lowered all the way through the vegetation down to the ground, swabbing DNA samples as it goes.
The swab is a simple piece of lint-free cloth that drags against the vegetation. And in case you're wondering why staying above the rainforest and swabbing down through it is the best idea, well, you've obviously never been to a rainforest before.
And they are pretty tough conditions. So rainforests have very extreme weather conditions. So it can be very hot, can be very humid. So that's quite of a challenge for the sensor on board of the drone, for the camera. It can be challenging to detect obstacles. And then what is very problematic is to fly eventually inside the rainforest. So this is where it's, extremely cluttered environment with many obstacles and so on. And so the way we solve this problem is to stay above the canopy, but just having the probe that goes inside the canopy. So in this way we are safely up, but we can still collect data from inside the vegetation where things are interesting and important to be monitored.
The drone uses 3D scans of the canopy to work out how close is too close to the treetops. And if the probe gets stuck, the drone is programmed to first wiggle it up and down, then to give it a sharp tug, and if all else fails, to cut the cord and return to base.
But what's special about this probe is that it allows us to access the canopy, which is very hard. That's 20, 30, even 40 meters off the ground. And that's a place where we don't know very much about biodiversity. And so the ability to go in and non-invasively sort of swab this space and collect that DNA is amazing, because now our other methods are to put up a poisonous gas and fog the tree and all the insects fall out dead. This is, maybe not what we want to do when we just want to know something's there.
Yeah, you're decreasing the biodiversity right there and then, aren't you, right?
Yeah.
I'm being swabbed. There's a lot of chemicals in this hair. That's going to skew their sample.
Each team has 24 hours to collect as much eDNA as possible from 1 square kilometre of rainforest, and then 48 hours to analyse the samples. And given that most of the millions of these samples collected will still be unidentifiable, teams are also scored on how well they can communicate the diversity of life that they find. And for BioDivX, that includes turning DNA into music.
And so I got fascinated by this process of being able to communicate what it is that we're finding, because as I said, most of the things we don't even know what species it is. We can't even put it in our tree of life. And so how do you communicate to people about things that they can't see and they don't know are there and we have no name for it? Well, if you give it a soundtrack, then it's a wonderful way to allow people to connect with biodiversity when we don't have other, means of communicating about what it is.
Is it a case then that in 10 years' time you might revisit the same forest and the soundtrack might have changed,
Yeah.
and there's a danger it might have got more reduced in its variety?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have this sort of dream that, if species are there in a place and they've all been evolving and interacting and they're in harmony, that the music from all of them together should sound good, like a symphony, right? And if it's a system that's, maybe the habitat's been degraded or an invasive species has come in, you would be able to hear that distortion because it would no longer be in harmony.
The DNA sequences determine the order of the notes, but then a human composer arranges the track into something that sounds good and brings the variety of life to life. And in fact, this music you're hearing right now, well, it's composed from the DNA of a honeybee, a bioluminescent snail, and the silver thyme tree. The X Prize Rainforest Finals happen this summer in the Amazon. And that's it for our dive into nature. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.